For months, unmanned strikes have helped slow the Russian advance by destroying military equipment. But now, footage from recent operations suggests Ukrainian drone units may be expanding their focus. Videos from strikes carried out across the occupied territory have revealed that drones are being used to target command posts, keeping Russians in the fight. Among the clearest examples of this emerging strategy is a recent operation conducted by the 413th Raid Brigade. In late May, the unit published clips from a strike on a deployment site used by Russia's 9th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade. The enemy position was located in a village by the shore of the currently occupied Donetsk region, not too far from the Russian border. According to reports, the site was formerly a children's camp soldiers used as a secret headquarters. In the video, it's impossible to distinguish any military assets or personnel across the terrain before the incoming drone collides with its target, seemingly confirming that if this was indeed a military base, as Ukrainian officials have claimed, the Russians had gone to considerable lengths to conceal their presence. Yet despite those efforts, Ukrainian operators were still able to locate and strike the facility, suggesting that Ukrainian drone units may be carrying out far more specialized tracking and targeting missions against Russian formations. This was also not the only instance in which unmanned attackers were used against enemy military compounds. Earlier in May, Ukrainian operators reportedly struck another facility. The compounds were once again linked to Russia's 9th Brigade, only this time, the target was located in the city of Pokrovsk, farther north. Some might deduce that these recent attacks were aimed exclusively at breaking down Russia's 9th Brigade. However, reports have noted that another temporary base, used by a different enemy unit, was targeted in April by drones from Ukraine's 413th Brigade, indicating that these attacks are not focused on a single unit, but on the command structure of Russian forces more broadly. Yet command posts are only one piece of the puzzle. Across southern Ukraine, drone operators are also actively targeting the supply lines that sustain the Russian hub network operating within occupied territory. Recently, Defense Intelligence of Ukraine shared footage from an operation carried out along the highway connecting the Russian-held cities of Berdyansk, Melitopol, and Zhankoy. The videos showcase one-way attack drones targeting both larger targets, driving along the road, and smaller vehicles, seemingly attempting to pass unnoticed by moving along dirt roads or stationing themselves in backyards across the countryside. Some personnel are even seen leaving their trucks behind and running as fast as they can before the incoming drone detonates. According to military analyst Clement Mollin, as of late May, Ukraine had succeeded in landing at least 15 hits against Russian vehicles, placing increasing pressure on Russian networks in the region. Sources suggest that Ukrainian intelligence units carry out these supply raid missions through a combination of reconnaissance and attack drones. Shark M surveillance drones search for Russian convoys moving through occupied territory, while loitering munitions and ram-type attack drones are used to carry out the final strike. It's unclear whether this method is similar to the one Ukraine's 413th Brigade uses to identify and target command posts. During the latest attacks against enemy brigades near the border, no details were given on the exact type of munition used in the strikes, nor on the specific strategy officials followed to gather information on the concealed enemy positions. However, during previous missions against Russian assets, the brigade leading the attacks on enemy hubs has become known for combining loitering munitions with reconnaissance drones that can transmit real-time battlefield intelligence. If similar tactics were used in their latest strikes, then it could indicate that the Ukrainian drone campaign is becoming increasingly sophisticated, able to pair diverse unmanned systems to locate, track, and bring down both moving targets and static positions across Ukraine. President Trump has assured Americans there's no need to rush into a deal to end the war with Iran. Time is on America's side. However, as experts pay close attention to U.S. aircraft returning to base, some can't help but wonder whether the situation in the skies over the Middle East can truly hold much longer. Not long after the start of the war, back on February 28th, Iranian officials claimed to have brought down an American KC-135 stratotanker, one of the main aerial refueling systems operating over the region. At the time, there was no confirmation of the alleged strike, but by early May, analysts began to worry that Iran had finally claimed its victim. Alarms rang after flight tracking data from Flight Radar 24 revealed that a KC-135 that had originally departed from the United Arab Emirates had suddenly gone off the grid while passing over Qatar, apparently after initiating an emergency landing. Even more ominously, it was said that the crew aboard issued the 7700 emergency signal before vanishing. Eventually, Pentagon officials came out to report that the aircraft had actually landed safely. No further details about where the aircraft was headed or whether it was on a mission when it issued the distress call were provided. It was almost as if they were trying to put the incident behind them as fast as possible. And now, recent images of a KC-135 landing at RAF Mildenhall in the UK may offer a clue as to why. The pictures, released by aviation photographer Andrew McKelvey, showed the aircraft's tail and wings covered in shrapnel damage. Analysts also noted that its refueling boom was gone, perhaps ripped off the tanker after it endured a particularly punishing barrage of enemy fire. It's not immediately clear when and where the aircraft was attacked. However, sources note that until recently, the tanker had been operating from Tel Aviv. Some suspect that the aircraft could have been one of the 5 tankers reportedly struck by the long-range attack launched against Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia back in March. However, as of now, that remains only speculation, and it is equally possible that the tanker was attacked much more recently. This seems to reinforce what many already suspected, that the ceasefire announced by President Trump back in April may be far more fragile than it appears, and that American aircraft remain vulnerable while operating over the region. And it's not only enemy fire that American crews flying over the Middle East have to worry about. Around the same time that Iran launched its long-range strike on Saudi Arabia, reports emerged that a set of KC-135 tankers had collided mid-air in an accident, which, according to officials, was not the direct result of an Iranian attack. At the time, U.S. Central Command stated, quote, "The incident occurred in friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury. 2 aircraft were involved in the incident. One of the aircraft went down in western Iraq, and the second landed safely." A couple of days after the incident, it was confirmed that all the crew on board the tanker that crashed were lost, marking some of the earliest casualties of the war and the first loss of a KC-135 during combat-related operations in over a decade. Photos captured at the Israeli airport where the surviving tanker landed show the aircraft missing part of its tail, further highlighting the difficult conditions pilots have been tasked with enduring throughout Operation Epic Fury. These incidents suggest that the American aircraft crisscrossing the skies of the Middle East may not have the luxury of waiting for a peace deal for much longer. Every day without an agreement brings the risk of another missile strike, another catastrophic accident, or another aircraft mysteriously vanishing mid-air. For decades, Moscow seemed impenetrable. Now, Russia is quietly transforming its capital into a wartime fortress. Missile launchers are appearing on rooftops, preparing the area for a barrage of incoming attackers, which some fear could soon make the Kremlin burn. For years, Russia has attempted to maintain the narrative that it holds the advantage in the war against Ukraine. However, the first time it became evident that Russian forces wouldn't be able to keep the war away from Moscow was in mid-2023, about a year and a half after Russia launched the full-scale invasion of its neighbor. Up until then, most attacks carried out by Ukrainian drones had focused on refineries, air bases, and oil depots. But then, in early May, on the eve of the Victory Day parade, videos began to surface, showing what was presumably the most dangerous strike against Moscow's high-ranking officials up until that point. The attack came late at night, when 2 unmanned attackers infiltrated the city and descended on the Senate Palace inside Moscow. Footage of the incident shows at least one of these drones detonating over the complex, albeit without causing major damage. At the time, however, there was still some doubts about how worried civilians living in Moscow should be. Shortly after the attacks, Russian officials declared this was part of a terrorist attack against Vladimir Putin. However, Ukrainian officials stated that the Kremlin had staged the strikes to justify an even more aggressive campaign against their nation. Whether or not Ukraine was behind this attack, the situation did not seem to get any better for Moscow in the following months. By summer, drones were seen coming down toward the streets of the city once again, this time targeting buildings said to be used as headquarters for teams of Russian cyber attackers. The following year, another round of attacks was captured over the Moscow oil refinery in Kapotnya. Both of these attacks appear to have caused more devastating explosions and dealt heavier damage to their targets, strongly suggesting that even if Russia had staged some of the earlier attacks against Moscow, the drone campaign against the capital was becoming more serious by the day. Just last May, Moscow endured one of its most punishing raids to date, after more than 600 drones were sent to carry out a day-long attack across 15 different regions. The raid was believed to have claimed the lives of at least 4 people and caused considerable damage not only to military bases and oil facilities, but also to local highways and civilian buildings. Even more worrisome for Russia, Ukraine's drone fleet no longer relies solely on one-way attackers that deal damage through direct strikes, but also on more advanced, reusable heavy bombers, commonly known as Baba Yaga drones, capable of striking multiple targets during a single mission before returning to base. Now it's become clear to the world that the Russian capital is in one of the most delicate positions it's faced in decades, and the only way to protect it seems to be arming as many rooftops across Moscow as possible with air defense systems. The video, published by military analyst Massimo Frantinelli, recently showed a helicopter placing what experts have identified as a Pantsir SMDE missile system on top of a civilian building, suggesting that no place in Moscow is considered safe anymore. These air defense systems are reportedly capable of identifying targets up to 15 miles away and countering them in less than 6 seconds, using a combination of 12 large missiles and 48 smaller interceptors that can neutralize an entire swarm of incoming enemies if necessary. Undoubtedly, these systems will provide a solid layer of defense for the capital. However, whether or not they can save the nation remains to be seen. Because if Russia is arming up its capital, it could be because officials know the enemy is getting near. Many remember the Chinese balloon incident, when in early February of 2023, a high-altitude object, which some believe was actively carrying out an intelligence-gathering mission, was shot down by an F-22 Raptor over South Carolina. What most don't know is that just a couple of days later, 3 other mysterious objects were detected across North America and taken out as well. For years, no one knew what they were, but now, a recently uncovered video has given analysts a new clue to solving the mystery. The footage was recently released as part of the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, an initiative to shed light on unsolved aerial sightings across America and abroad, but which has had mixed results, leading many analysts to wonder why these reports were kept from the public in the first place. The video, captured from an American F-16 Fighting Falcon flying over Lake Huron near the border with Canada, shows a small, unidentified object detected by the aircraft's sensors at an altitude of 20,000 feet. Just looking at the images, it's not immediately clear what the object is, as it appears to be nothing more than a sphere with some kind of wire hanging from it. Apparently, the pilot on board the jet couldn't tell what the object was, even when looking at it in person. In an audio recording from the aircraft released by the War Zone, the airman can be heard stating, quote, "I wouldn't really call it a balloon. I don't know what. I can see it outside with my eyes. Looks like there's some kind of object that's distended. It's hard to tell. It's pretty small." There wasn't even a consensus on the exact material the object was made of. Regardless, once deemed a potential threat, the jet tears it apart with an AIM-9X Sidewinder missile strike. At the time, officials didn't provide much information about what the object was suspected to be, or what had been discovered when it was retrieved from the debris. However, months after the incident, the Canadians began to talk. Another mysterious object has recently been shot down over Canada. Not much was known about it, but rumors spread after local media outlets released a picture of it moments before it was neutralized. The object appears to be a flat, shiny disc with a horseshoe silhouette, which is not immediately identifiable as any known aircraft. The same Canadian outlet revealed that upon requesting further information from authorities about the mysterious objects, they were told that a device resembling a harmless weather tracking station had been recovered among the debris and was believed to be associated with one of the objects. If that was truly the case, then it's not clear why footage of the objects wasn't made public sooner. In fact, the still image of the puzzling horseshoe-shaped flying object was reportedly declassified almost as soon as it was taken, but was then withheld by authorities for an unexplained reason. According to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, the reason this footage was kept from the public was that it first needed to be reviewed, and given the low threat these mysterious objects appeared to pose, they weren't given priority. Still, so far, there hasn't been an explanation for why it took nearly 3 years for this video to finally see the light, or whether it would have been officially released if not for the constant pressure exerted by lawmakers over the past few years. The video captured by the F-16 over Lake Huron suggests that the object shot down was some kind of balloon, based on how it broke apart after being hit. However, as of now, there's still no definitive answer about what these flying objects were. And while new files keep being released by the Pentagon, as long as the aircraft seen on them remain unidentified, many will keep wondering, could these be foreign technology deployed to America for military purposes? Or could they be something else entirely?